Helen Glover is heading to the Olympics for the fourth time. Already a two-time Olympic champion, this extraordinary mum of three is aiming to medal again in front of her kids in Paris. To quote you, I have no intention about going back. that was a year ago. So what has changed? What are you doing? You're back on the boat.
She just laughs at me because she's like, we both left the sport at the same time together after Rio, and she's got two kids now, and she's just kind of going, what are you doing? I can't believe you're still there. Yeah. When we won, we were the first women to win gold for Britain in rowing. We were the first gold of Team GB at the home games, and we were like rabbits in headlights. When we got our Team GB kit the other day, there was a little Team GB journal in the pocket of one of the bags designed for each day of the Olympic Games. I mean, I'm never going to touch it, but I like the idea of it. Whatever it is the society wants to tell you, there's a reason you can't do something. I just think it's so exciting proving that wrong.
Helen, a couple of weeks ago, I got back in contact with you again because I read the press. And I remembered what you had said to me on a podcast we filmed some time ago with Steve and Ben, where, to quote you, because I had to look this up to check I was right, to quote you, I have no intention about going back. that was a year ago. So what has changed? What are you doing? You're back on the boat.
I know, I guess part of me just can't leave. I definitely feel like there's a mixture of unfinished business. But then also when I had time to really digest and reflect the Tokyo period, I feel like I spent so much energy, physical and emotional, just proving people wrong and proving that I can do it as a mother and juggling the young kids. And actually, I did so much to show that I can do it. I want to reap the rewards and see how well I can do it. And now there's not that question anymore. It is more performance based. Like, of course, I'm still putting my family first and making it work and having a juggle, but it excites me to see what I can do, not just that I can still do it.
But it is still the juggle. You still got to make the juggle work. So how are you doing that? How are you muddling through being a full-time mum and also a full-time Olympian?
Well, number one, Steve is really supportive, and we try to make it work. We've both got weird jobs where we're out of the country a fair bit as well. So we always make sure one of us is home. So my calendar's fairly rigid. He's been able to be a bit more flexible with his to make sure he's home. Like, I'm out in Italy right now and he's home with the kids, and he will be all the way up until Paris. So having that flexibility, but then I think in showing that I'm still capable and still at the top of my game, my coaches then have that open flexibility to making it work and that open mind as well. So it does kind of take a team approach. And then I think just for me, that just really determined state of mind where if I'm going to put my kids first, there will be days where it absolutely floors me. And accepting that, and accepting there are days where I don't feel like the best athlete in the world, but actually it gives me more energy back when I'm there for my kids.
How did you get there? Is that almost like sort of Tokyo was the warm up to where you're at now in terms of understanding how you make that work? Because like you say, most athletes are not comfortable with knowing that they didn't have a great day and overanalyze it again and again and again to work out why that might have been. So how have you sort of matured in your state of mind to get past that?
Weirdly, the state of mind I have now is something that when I was in my 20s, before London and before Rio, I would have disagreed with everything I'm about to say. I used to think you had to be totally focused and single-minded. I used to think there was no other way than to leave no stone unturned and to lead the perfect athlete lifestyle. And that's how I approached those two Olympics. And now I'm sat on the cusp of Paris, feeling like I'm in the best shape of my life and having done it with so many things going wrong and going badly and bad night's sleep. And I think the superpower you get from being a parent is this big perspective and this total perspective shift on winning isn't everything, but I'm going to put everything into it. And at the end of the day, no matter what, I have my kids and I have my family. And it's so freeing. I get to be the best version of myself, and it's so freeing that the result still isn't going to define me. And so I think I've thrown myself into it because I've chosen to come and do it.
I remember last time we had a chat, you said that it was so important for you to do Tokyo for Bo, to show her as a young girl what was possible as a mum as well as an athlete. So I guess you're nudging it on, aren't you, with the idea of Paris? Because like you say, this isn't just about making it work as a juggling act. It's about performance now.
Yeah, and it's also nudging it on in a very real way for them because the twins were babies when I flew
Yeah.
out to Tokyo. This time they'll be there as 4-year-olds at the finish line. So it's a much more, I guess, physical
Yeah.
representation of what I'm trying to show. And not just to my kids, but to girls and to women. And it's a really, really big, genuine driving factor for me is this kind of, I guess, this statement that you make when you, whether it's a family or whether it's age or whatever it is the society wants to tell you, there's a reason you can't do something. I just think it's so exciting proving that wrong.
And also, do you remember when we spoke about the fact that everyone had just assumed you were retiring? There was just this like assumption amongst knowing people that you were retiring and you weren't going to do another games. And you were like, well, hang on a minute, I haven't actually made that call. And you wanted to sort of prove them wrong. Is this part of that as well?
Yeah, and the most exciting thing I think about this is how quickly things begin to change once they start. So now, 4 years on, there's already another mother on the team. There's already people talking in just general conversation, talking about what they're going to do next Olympic cycle. Every time it gets to this time in the Olympic cycle, people talk about whether they're going to carry on, whether they're going to retire. And historically, those were the two options. You carry on or you retire and maybe start a family. And now the conversation is just, yeah, I might have a year off and have I really want to start a family, but I'll potentially come back after that. And to have authentic conversations with the women on the team like that just feels like it doesn't take much to change a lot. And that's really exciting.
I also feel like you kind of paved the way for other women to feel that way.
I hope so a little bit. And I think that the tough conversations I had to have, I hope none of them ever have to have. And the tricky bits of coming back, I hope they don't have to experience. And the feeling of questioning yourself because other people are questioning you, they won't have to go through. And I think that's really important. And you do see it across lots of other sports, and you do see it outside of sport as well, where women are kind of putting their foot down and saying, no, I won't have it that I'm going to be put in this box and left in it. So I think it's really exciting. I definitely think this game's coming up is going to be one where the mums of the team play a really big role.
And also, like I was looking at the stats, and there's something like 50% of your rowing team that are going to the Olympics that are on their debut. So, does that also give you a bit of a mentoring responsibility to sort of just help them on that journey?
Yeah, definitely. I think like my teammates know I'm very open to kind of giving I don't want to impose any of my kind of thoughts and feelings about it on anybody, but it's really nice, especially now we're out here on training camp. There's these quiet times after dinner where you'll be sat down with a group and someone will say, oh yeah, I was going to ask you about this, about how you were feeling on this camp before London or Rio. And yeah, I guess this is probably the time where my experience is going to come into its own. And I think that's something I'm really proud of, because when I never thought that would be my role on the team. When I first came on, I looked to the Catherine Grangers and the Anna Watkins and the people who were so experienced and looked up to them, never expecting to carry on for this long.
I feel like it's also come to the rest of us as this big surprise that, this happened. I mean, has it been something that, how long have you been working on this game plan for? Because I feel like you sort of started that conversation with me last year by going, no intention of going back, but obviously behind the scenes, scurrying away, working out, actually, is that something I want to do again?
I think that pre-Tokyo, it was a genuine surprise. Like I hadn't been in the boat, hadn't been on for 4 years. I hadn't intended to go back at all. Post Tokyo, I wasn't making any moves to go back. I wasn't in touch with the coaches. The team and the coaches had actually sent me an email of happy retirement. I received an email from the coaches saying, we'll see you around. And so I was staying fit though this time round. I was keeping my eye in. I was going on the occasional row. So it was like an intentional detraining, if that makes sense. So I didn't just go cold turkey like after Rio, where I was just done with it. So when I did come back, I was ready to go, really.
Well, how did that all happen then? Because if everyone was just like, oh, no, 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 Helen, happy retirement, have a great time, have a great life, we'll see you around. How did it go from that to being selected?
Well, we have a new head coach on board, and I kind of got in touch with him and said, I'm fit and go. I think I'm going quite well, and um, there's a really kind of clear set way of getting onto the team. It's a trialing system. So you trial in the November, you trial around Christmas time, and then again at the Easter. And I just told myself, just go to the first trial and just turn up. And if you are at the bottom of the pile, you've got nothing to lose. I don't have too much pride or ego around that maybe I would have had before. I just think actually, I almost feel like I needed something to help me make the decision. And if I came last, I wouldn't have minded, because that would just be the universe telling me to give it up, you know? But I went to that trial and won it in November, and it was like, okay, I'll carry on and I'll just go to the next one and go to the next one. And then it kind of organically happened like that. But then by the Christmas time, I was just, yeah, well and truly back in it.
Right. So, what conversation did you have with your husband when you came back from that particular trial, thinking, oh, well, if I finish last, then that's the universe deciding my fate for me, versus, oh, I won the trial? I mean, because I remember again, really noticeably, his sort of reaction to the idea that you may be going again, because these things they're a completely collective, like you mentioned before, team effort, and you need the support of your family to be absolutely on board, which I no doubt that he absolutely is that person for you. He gets as emotional about it as you would and the rest of us. But what was that conversation like when you came back from that trial? What was the reaction?
I think, if I'm honest, it is quite polarizing for him, because on one hand, he's so excited by it, and to see our kids follow this journey, and it'll be him physically taking the kids out there and watching it, and seeing all that potential for what it could bring the whole family to be on this journey is really exciting. And he wants me to be fulfilled and to see out this journey as well. But on the other hand, and that's kind of the bedrock of how he feels about it. But the day to day is really different, because on the day to day, it's hard. It's hard for a family to function. When we've both got busy lives, and we're trying to, we're there WhatsApping through the day because we've forgotten who's doing the pickup and the drop off that day, and my a training session has run over, or some of his work has run over, so we're balancing. But I think that, yeah, so day to day, I think we definitely have both really questioned in a very genuine way. We've both really questioned me doing this, and I've become closer than I ever have been in my whole career to genuinely leaving it and saying, no, this isn't right for me. And I think he's probably felt that way too, and potentially not shared it with me so much, because it's a difficult thing to say to a partner who's giving their all to everything. But I think definitely the fundamental bedrock of it all is that he is really supportive. And of course, we're going to go through these waves of ups and downs.
And what is it like on a day-to-day basis training for an Olympic Games? I mean, you're on a training camp at the minute. What does it look like? Because to the layperson, I think most people recognize that rowing is one of the toughest sports out there. It's absolutely painstakingly grueling. But can you just sort of take us on that journey with you of what it takes to do what you're going to be doing?
Well, yeah, we're at training camp at the moment, and the purpose of training camp is normally so you can really just add on those extra miles. You get more recovery, you get your food cooked for you, so you can have more downtime to train harder. But to be honest, with what my day to day feels like, this is a bit of a holiday camp. my day to day at home is quite full on. So my day to day at home would be, I'm up and out of the house early. The kids all wake up at 5 anyway, so I'm kind of up, and it's nice to have. I usually have about an hour with them, just making them breakfast and playing and reading. Then I'll leave them with Steve at about 6. Then I go to our training base where we do a 2-hour row, and then we'll have a break, have breakfast, and then we'll do another hour and a half, which has got some sprints and intensity in. And then the rest of the team will lift weights late in the afternoon, but I'll go straight from that second session to a weight session, because mine sort of non-negotiable is that I want to do school pickup every day. So from that weight session, I go to pickup. and then have the rest of the day with the kids. So it's, whether they're going off to swimming or tennis or just home to play. And then I think that all kind of rumbles from one to the other very, very quickly. You don't really stop for breath. I think the most difficult time is probably bedtime, because my 3 children don't like going to bed.
Welcome to all our worlds.
Yeah. And you just kind of see the time stretching out where you're exhausted. It all catches up with you. And you're just thinking, I'd be desperate to be sleeping right now. Why don't you go and sleep? And so that evening, it can be really difficult when you're just tired, but then you get up and do it again the next day. And so, yeah, right now out on training camp, we're doing a very similar kind of training routine with a few more extra miles, but a lot more downtime.
And how much do you suffer? I mean, I really suffer with it, and I empathise with anybody else who does. How do you suffer with the mum guilt bit? I
knew you were going to ask that question. I know I just feel like I've come to the conclusion that no matter what you do, you're going to experience it. When I have, for quite a lot of the children's childhood, I haven't been a rower. For the first few years when I had Logan, that was before Tokyo, and I retired. This time round, after Tokyo, I had a good year or two where I wasn't rowing. And I would say the mum guilt just raised its head in different forms. And I just think that it's so important to be so convinced with what you're doing, but also to check in with yourself. I think that if you were just so single-mindedly going at something like an Olympic Games that you didn't consider or think about its implications, then that wouldn't be right. But that also isn't a mum's natural instinct. I think that every week or so, or daily, you're just constantly checking in. Is this working for the family? Are the children happy? Do they feel loved? Do they feel stable? Is there anything else I could be doing as a mum? And I think constantly running through that checklist for me makes me show up as the best mum I can be. And I do genuinely think that finding something that you love, that drives you, that gets that fire burning and gives you some individuality away from your family and that real kind of identity, for me, it does make me a better mum. And I turn up and show up for my kids totally present, because I've kind of filled that cup in the other area.
Did you go through, when I had my little ones, I went through that period of time, especially with my first Bellatrix, where having kind of given up what was quite a full-on career in order to have her, I definitely went through this slight identity crisis, trying to work out who I was and what I was all about, and obviously wanting to be the best possible version of a mum, but at the same time having loved a career and then not sort of doing that anymore because the two didn't go together. Have you been through that process? Join us for the Performance People podcast every week for the highs, lows, lessons and stories from people like this lot. Michael Johnson.
Some days what I would see is a person who is a shell of what I used to be.
Eddie Hearn.
We don't operate in a business that's dangerous, but we just operate in one where you've got to sleep with one eye open.
Mo Farah.
It couldn't get any harder than what I've gone through, and at that point I just went for it.
Paula Radcliffe.
You can only control yourself.
Susie Wolf.
And Toto did once liken me to a donkey.
Every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts.